I'm Cassie Adams, Care Services Director for ALS Northwest, and today I'll be joined in presenting with Rebekah Albert, Bereavement Services Coordinator. We are so excited to be joining everyone for the International Alliance of ALS MND Associations Allied Professionals Forum. Today we'll be discussing our organization's journey in providing grief and bereavement supports to the ALS community. First off, I have nothing to disclose. The goal of our presentation today is to share how ALS Northwest identified a need for enhanced bereavement support, the areas of expansion and support that we've added on in terms of our program, and our continued next step. ALS Northwest is dedicated to improving the quality of life for people living with ALS. Throughout our 24-year history, we have developed, refined, and expanded our services based on the premise that everyone has the right to define what quality of life means to them. From the beginning, ALS Northwest has developed services and practical support tools to help people with ALS live with the disease. Recognizing that ALS is a progressive disease with no cure, our board and our staff have prioritized the expansion of bereavement services as part of our commitment to service people living with ALS, their caregivers, and other family members. Prior to the expansion, what we did offer individuals in the community was care coordination throughout all regions of our entire state of Oregon and Southwest Washington. And that could look like engagement in home visits, providing resources and support, engaging in support groups, and partnering with multidisciplinary ALS centers. Those dedicated care services staff would often support people from the moment of their diagnosis up until their death. But most of our services stopped at the passing of that person living with ALS. We did have some ongoing grief and bereavement support services, but they were pretty minimal. So we really looked at what next? What can we do as a community to support people living with ALS and their families after their death? For many years, the ALS community has communicated a need for increases in bereavement and grief support. And from the beginning, ALS Northwest has really been all about supporting those individuals and their families and looking at long-term solutions for their families. After years of discussing with the ALS community and planning, our board and our staff decided that it was time to expand our existing bereavement supports as part of our commitment to people living with ALS and their family members. So prior to 2022, our organization was providing support through a bereavement letter series, a volunteer facilitated grief support group, and an annual remembrance event. We did not have any dedicated bereavement or grief support person. It was mostly being managed by care services coordinators who are understandably engaging with newly diagnosed individuals and their current caseload. Approximately 130 to 140 people living with ALS who are supported by our organization pass away each year. And this leaves many grieving family members, friends, and community members who are in search for support. In planning for the expansion of our existing bereavement program, we decided that we were going to really focus on three areas. The first area was ALS-specific grief support. In general, there's a lack of ongoing support from our organization for people who've lost a loved one to ALS. At that time, we realized that people really needed support from other members who had the experience of losing a loved one to ALS. We frequently hear from participants that there's really nothing like losing a loved one from ALS. And so having that opportunity to connect in with others with that unique experience is really supportive and helpful. The second area we decided to focus on was aftercare. And although many individuals living with ALS utilize hospice for end-of-life care and have some access to aftercare support, not all do. And this means that some primary bereaved do not have an aftercare support and may struggle to access the resources for accessing grief and loss support after the death of their loved one. And the third area we decided to focus on was navigating support. Both of the logistic and emotional complications of death can be complicated and really complex. Our organization at the time had limited staff bandwidth, and we really realized that we needed a dedicated person to help lead the charge. So in December of 2023, we were able to hire on our organization's first ever bereavement services coordinator. And I'm going to turn it over to Rebekah Albert, who is our bereavement services coordinator, to speak about how she has worked to develop a foundation for this program and the really wonderful services that we have added as a result.
I'm so happy to be here today and share some of my experiences as the first bereavement support coordinator for ALS Northwest. First of all, at ALS Northwest, bereavement support services have been developed on the premise that grief following the loss of a loved one to ALS is a normal response to profound loss. We focus on helping family members develop skills moving forward with their grief and not necessarily trying to minimize or get rid of their grief. When a person with ALS dies, their ALS care coordinator makes the initial contact on behalf of ALS Northwest. An online survey was also developed to help our care coordinators make referrals. And since anticipatory grief before or at the time of diagnosis can impact people, we also accept referrals from those who are currently living with ALS. We have also set a time at our care meetings on a monthly basis to discuss referrals. Two primary ways we communicate with bereaved family members is through letters, which are delivered through the Postal Service at regular intervals throughout the first year, at 1 month, 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, and then at the end of the first year. We added email letters at the 4th month, and we provide online letters for those who prefer this method of communication. Another thing we did at the beginning of 2023 was release an online survey to those who had attended a virtual bereavement support group meeting after the death of their loved one. We were gratified to receive a 60% response rate to the survey, and it provided invaluable information, which led to the development of more in-person support groups, adding additional guest speakers to virtual support group meetings, and providing additional resource materials online and in person to program participants, and finally, the development of a quarterly newsletter. We developed an online newsletter called Navigating Grief, which goes out to those family members who have opted in to receive communication from ALS Northwest following the death of their loved one. Articles highlight self-help activities and external resources within the philosophical context of grief as a normal and natural response to profound loss, with no prescribed timeline or finish line. Readers are also encouraged to submit their own writings to share with others in this community. As I mentioned earlier, we now offer in-person support groups as well as virtual support groups, and I also provide individual meetings to care partners and other family members during the first year after the death of their loved one. The bereavement program services is based on a premise that grief is a normal response to loss, and every individual's experience is unique and valid. In this spirit, if people wish to continue to participate in support groups and personal meetings after the end of the first year, they are welcome to do so. Anticipated outcomes are focused on helping individuals access appropriate support relating to their quality of life and well-being as manifested through participation in work and or regular activities in their lives and increased social interactions and contacts within their community. The reassessment survey is to assess how expansion of our bereavement services have impacted coping and feelings of well-being among those grieving the loss of a loved one to ALS and to inform future program development. During spring of 2024, we plan to host one or more focus groups for participants to share their own experience, perceptions, and suggestions for further growth of our bereavement support program. So looking forward into this year, coming year, we've identified some next steps that we want to implement. First is reassessing the location of our in-person support groups and the timing. We've tried to identify some convenient geographic locations in the Portland metro area and surrounding suburbs, and we're going to keep working on that to find locations that maybe are a little more convenient for people in transit. And we're also looking for expanded opportunities for bereaved and individual support outside the metro area because we provide services around the state of Oregon and Southwest Washington. So lessons learned during this first year include a recognition that grief often begins at or before the diagnosis of ALS. We have learned that bereavement support doesn't necessarily end at the 12-month mark. Many of our people need support long after 12 months. And finally, for me in particular, the role of bereavement coordinator, I've had to set some pretty clear boundaries for myself and for the people I work with and walk with to explain that I am not a therapist, I am not a spiritual guide, or a personal friend. I am a support person who's here to walk the walk with people as they go through their own particular grief journeys. And so finally, understanding on a daily basis that we can't do it all, but whatever we can do will be of value to the people we connect with.
Lastly, Rebekah and I just want to thank all of you for your time and your attention and your interest in this subject. We really feel that adding bereavement support services to our programming has been a huge help to the ALS community, and we really look forward to continuing to do more. We encourage all of you who are watching to think about how you might want to implement some of these sort of strategies and some programming to your own work. And Rebekah and I are more than happy to be resources and share our experience and welcome you in reaching out anytime with questions or to share the wonderful work that you're doing in your community as well. All right, thank you so much, and I hope everyone enjoys the rest of the conference.
Thank you so much for that really interesting presentation, and we do have time for questions. And Marcella has a question down here in the front. We'll start with her.
Hi, Marcella from ALS Association in Colombia. Thank you for your presentation. I just have a question. Did you explore any distinctions in support services for families of people with ALS who underwent assisted dying or euthanasia compared to other cases?
That's a great question. I can certainly share that Oregon is a state that supports assisted dying. We do have a number of those individuals who join our support groups. We haven't made an exact distinction between those two groups, but it's a really interesting topic that you bring up and potentially something for us to look into in the future. Rebekah, if you want to add to that.
I would just say that, I've had the opportunity to meet with in support groups and one-on-one conversations with many people who have chosen that option. I would say that other people either don't bring it up or possibly they went a different route and they didn't use that resource that is available in our state. And again, I don't really have a sense of how that's impacting people in their particular grief journeys after the death of their loved one, but I think that it's a very interesting question.
And we do have an online question.
I've got a question here from Katharina Linder, who's at Inselspital Bern, and she's asking, who pays for this grief counseling?
Yeah, so the grief support, well, first off, we should distinguish that Rebekah does not provide counseling. She is a support service individual, so she's very clear up front about her role. But all of our programs through our organization are at no cost to the people living with ALS and the families that we support. Our funding comes primarily from donors, fundraising events, and grants. And I'll let Rebekah speak a little bit more towards her role. the distinguishing there?
You know, I'm a person who, my role with the program is to really be another person at ALS Northwest that connects with individuals who have lost someone. And in many cases, they will have already told their care coordinator that they are interested in bereavement support. In some cases, they may not have said specifically that they want to talk to somebody, but I will have heard from a family member or somebody in their community that they think that they could use the support. So in those cases, I'll make a call and I will invite them to visit with me. We will talk about what supports they have. I kind of have a list of 8 or 9 things that I ask to sort of give me a sense of where they are. And I do as much listening as I do talking. So many times I would just be a person outside their immediate sphere that is doing some listening, and then I can provide some additional resources for therapists and counselors in their the area that they live in. And sometimes just giving a person a resource for a therapist or a counselor, I find out later from that person when I speak to them in a month or two that they're engaged with that therapist and that that's proving to be helpful. Some people do not prefer to see a therapist. They really just want to kind of talk to somebody who's outside their own support system or their personal family and friends and kind of hear themselves sort of talk about what they're going through and what they think the next best steps are. So I'm an active listener, but I want to emphasize that a lot of my role is listening and helping people really sort of sort through the options of where they are and what they want to do next.
And there's another question back here.
A presentation. I think it's really important. And as you were talking, I kept thinking about the Australian report around complicated grief and mitigating factors around if we provide high quality support while people are living with ALS, and we help to minimize regret, which is a core function of palliative care, we can really help set people up. And regardless of what we do, you know, the devastation of ALS is profound out of any of the other neurological diseases of losing someone. And so I think it's really important that we think about the streamlined approach. And thank you for segmenting and separating out and creating a position specifically for this. I really appreciate you and thank you for telling your story. And I think we have a lot to learn.
Yes, thank you for that question. Go ahead.
Me?
No, Cassie and Rebekah, if you had something to.
Oh, yeah. Well, thank you so much. We really appreciate that. And I think this is something that we talk a lot about is how we can best support, as was mentioned in the presentation, care partners and people living with ALS while they're also living with the disease.
Not that sort of, whether we call it complicated grief or anticipatory grief. And I know from my own experience with a loved one that had a different terminal disease, devastating in different ways, that the grief and the bereavement oftentimes start before there really is a definitive diagnosis. And so living with a person who's experiencing this disease as a care partner or a family member is just it's just a huge burden and challenge for any person. And so I think it is incredible that ALS Northwest decided to fund a position for this work, and I'm really honored to be the first person who's working on this with ALS Northwest. You know, it's wonderful to have the opportunity to meet with people and to learn so much from them.
Yeah, and you probably want to get together with those people in Australia and have a discussion. So I think that's all of our time for this discussion. Oh, there's one more online. Okay, you have 19 seconds.
Okay. Kevin Robinson from Wales asks, is there an opportunity to begin navigating bereavement prior to passing other than existing caregiver meetings or groups?
Yes, there is. We are willing and able to meet with people who are engaged in their caregiving at any point that we find out that they would like to receive support.
And I think we're excited to explore more opportunities to do that outside of our care partner support groups. And, you know, we're coming into our second year, so we're really able to kind of dig in and really find more options for the people that we support. So thank you so much.
All right. Thank you so much. We're going to say thank you to Rebekah, Cassandra, and Cassandra's cat.